Salvete, mihi nomen est, Stella, et hoc est Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 220 for April MMXXII. Fulicem diem natalem to Rome on the 21st. Batgirl the Oracle is brought to you by milehighcomics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out milehighcomics.com. Well, by the time you hear this, I will have returned from another sojourn to New York City, this time to see Macbeth, starring Daniel Craig and Ruth Negga, which I'm super excited about. But what makes it even better is that I will be joined by my two dearest friends, one of them a former beloved, Donovan Morgan Grant and Joshua Lappin Bertoni. So I'm super excited just to hang out with those guys Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And yeah, just take in the city, see this awesome play. I'm actually rereading Macbeth, which I did it maybe a couple years ago. Tom and I did it on required reading. So just reading it again to get ready for that. And then Harry, who's been on the show a couple times, he's going to be coming up for a day or so. And then, or down, I guess, since he's in Massachusetts. And then Carolyn Professor, my chief Tata correspondent, is also going to be stopping by on Sunday. So it's just going to be like an awesome party. And I may see for colored girls who have, I think, what is it? For colored girls who have contemplated suicide when the rainbow isn't enough. I think that's what the full title is. I'm thinking about seeing that, just trying to nail down, trying to get my former student, now friend, Claire, who's up at Columbia, to see it with me. So I might see that Saturday evening. But yeah, I'm super excited for it. And it's one of those things that, just like grad school gives me, some positivity in my life. Like this has been okay. It's been rough. It's been a rough spring or end of winter, but here's something to look forward to. So I'm just super pumped about it. So I guess to continue on from that, that's some Find Your Joy right there. But to specifically get into the Find Your Joy segment, AKA Shag's Mac and Cheese of Comfort and Joy, First, let me talk about the Oscars. So Heath Barr, aka Sam Heath, who has been on the show twice now, he did Joker's Last Laugh and that political book with me, Politics in Gotham. He and I, for the past 3 years now, have done a competition on the Oscars where we predict who will win what, and then whoever guesses the most correct gets to tell the other person what book they have to read. And I've lost 2 years in a row. The first year, it was really poor, and I was like, how did he get so many? And I found out that he was using like websites and their predictions to form his predictions, which I thought was cheating. So I had to read My Name is Asher Lev, which was a good book. I mean, I trust him. We have basically the same reading palette, so it could be worse. And then the next year I said, okay, you can't use any internet sources, and let's choose what our heart wants. And he still won, which is pretty ridiculous, but maybe that speaks to our characters. And so this year it was all out. I was using some of these predictors, and there was one that I didn't really use the predictor because Best Picture, it was like a tie, but also leaning towards Power of the Dog. And I did not care for Power of the Dog. And so I loved Coda. I felt like it really deserved it. I thought it was really good. I know Power of the Dog. So on principle, I chose Coda, and Coda won Best Picture. And I ended up getting 21 out of 23 correct on my predictions. I think he had like 14 to 16. I can't remember. So I won, and I had chosen for him the first and the original Thrawn book by, I was going to say Chuck Wendig. Why can't I remember who writes the Thrawn books? This is terrible. I was just even making requests in the library. You know what I'm talking about though. And so I am looking forward to hearing what he has to say. And he posts on Instagram kind of like I do, but he's a bit more, I don't know. I don't want to say pretentious, but he always has like a quote after the book that he has read. And so he had post something and then I typed a response and said, "What about Thrawn?" And then he texted me this week with a picture of one of the pages of Thrawn. So he has started. So the Oscars, I was just happy to win, but that competition, but I'm just super excited and happy for Coda. I think that it certainly deserved it for sure. I recently rewatched all of Daria. I just had this weird inkling to rewatch it. I thought this would be fun. I think it came after Clone Wars. Like, be fun to revisit Daria. And she's a funny gal and she's really intelligent. And I could almost make a Daria's reading list, kind of like I did with Gilmore Girls and the Rory Gilmore's reading list, because of how many books that she reads, as well as that insane English class where every time you see the English class are doing some new book, it's almost like they do a new book or a new play, some new work every week, which I would probably die, but I guess it's good for Daria. And there was actually one episode where in that class, there was a list of works on the board. And I think the lesson was something about moral tales. And I think the assignment was create your own moral tale. And there were a bunch of things that I'd seen, like Frankenstein, Huckleberry Finn, like pretty standard stuff. And then on the right side, I'm trying to make out these two that I've never heard of before. And one of them is The Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac. And the other one is Breakfast of Champions by Kurt Vonnegut. And the Bums, I keep doing that. The Dharma Bums is about hiking. So it's still traveling, but hiking. And then Breakfast of Champions apparently is like super controversial and about race and racial relations in America. And so I currently have that one checked out. I just got it on hold, but there's only one Dharma Bums in the library system here, and someone has checked out. Ridiculous. But I'm looking forward to reading these two, and one of them might pop up in a podcast. Who knows? And I just recommend Daria. I think it's just really funny and how dry and sarcastic she is. I think I would get along well with her. And then finally, I've been replaying Resident Evil 2. I've decided to attempt the platinum. Hardcore is, well, it's hardcore. It's just tough. And I feel like overall the setting of it and the map, I guess, is more difficult than Resident Evil 3, where Resident Evil 3, I kind of quickly memorized where I needed to go. But Resident Evil 2, I feel like there are more settings, and it's just, I mean, especially when you get into the sewer, it's just super maze-like, and narrowing down what is necessary and what isn't necessary to do in order to get those run times down is just crazy. So I did do Leon A hardcore and I got the trophy, and I was going to do B. I don't really need to, but I just thought, oh, it'd be good practice. And then I'll have to do Claire A and B. And then I have the minimalist. I can't use an herb item, and I can't use the item box. And then I have to play Fourth Survivor, which I watched some footage on that at a low period, like a slow period at work. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's going to be insane. So that might actually be a really tough trophy. But yeah, hardcore is difficult. Ada Wong annoys me, and that whole section is just ridiculous. And that's probably where I have my most difficulty, because I get lost in that section on any of the difficulties. And then now it's worse because of hardcore. And then with the Mr. X situation and just being like really frenzied, he actually, once I finally got past the maze section, I just did not use her spycraft quick enough. And so I was making the fan go, or I have to jump in, and he walloped me and killed me. So then the second time, I still wasn't as good with the spycraft, just on this one part. And he was like literally right behind me. And I was like, ah! And then I jumped through the fan. But man, once I get past that section of Ada Wong, I'm like, okay, I can breathe a sigh of relief. Who knows what Sherry's section is like on hardcore with Claire, but I feel like probably not as stressful. But anyone chasing me always gets me nervous. But that has been fun. And just replaying RE Revelations in the RE5 got me wanting to do that. And I got a couple costumes so I could see. Right now, I'm playing Leon in the Arclay Sheriff, and I'm looking forward to. Claire's got a military outfit. She's got the. I can't remember what the name is, but it's the racing outfit because it was originally what the character was going to be called. And then the noir stuff. I'm looking forward to playing that. I think that's it. Find the joy. So I've been trying to find my joy. And, work is work. I think maybe I won't talk about it in this episode since I kind of let off some stuff in the previous one. So we'll just try to keep positive here. So let's just jump into the quickies. And as I said in the previous episode, I think I've understood or found what my rhythm's going to be, where I have a couple quickies and then the main event, at least on the vintage side, is that I will be alternating between Batgirls, Cassandra Cain's Batgirls, and Birds of Prey. So last episode was Batgirl, and I'm going to do some Birds of Prey. So 2 Nightwings, and I've actually sent out some tweets to Devin Grayson this morning because I do have some questions. I talked about that relationship and feeling a bit strained between Dick and Babs. And so I had some questions that I'll send her. Haven't gotten anything back yet, but maybe in part 2, she will have responded. So we'll see. So Nightwing 78 Super Cop, April 2003 is the cover date. Writer Devin Grayson, penciler Rick Leonardi, inker Jesse Delperdang, colorist Gregory Wright, and digital chameleon. The publisher synopsis says, as Nightwing takes on the new tarantula, a familiar face turns up dead in the sewers of Bloodhaven. Meanwhile, the cops of Bloodhaven are becoming increasingly violent. There's a press woman in there, and I'm definitely that press woman who keeps saying magnificent when she sees Nightwing. I recommend just seeing those sections there. With the Dick and Babs stuff, so Dick wakes Babs up. I don't know why she keeps her comms on by her bed, but she does. And he tells her he can't come over that night. He has to find out who this tarantula is. So she's going to be following her. He's going to be following her. And Babs tells him, hey, it's a job for the police. Oh, wait, you are the police. And Dick asks if she is worried or jealous. And later they say that they'll talk about it later. Once his actual police patrol begins, there's a lot of drama going on in the police station. He calls Babs to apologize, and they actually call each other boyfriend and girlfriend, which is really nice. I feel like we don't see that a lot. I almost feel like that might have been the first time they used those sort of monikers or labels. And she says she's not jealous. He's been best friends with Donna since he was 13, and she knows he respects women, but she is worried about him and how much he's doing, which this has been a theme for a while. And if he keeps it up, he or someone else is going to get hurt. But he doesn't get to hear too much of that conversation because he and his partner actually interrupt an extreme showing of police brutality. So, all of that fell on literally deaf ears or no ears. And then in Nightwing 79, No Son of Mine, May 2003, cover date, writer Devin Grayson, penciler Rick Leonardi, and inker Jesse Delperdang, colorist Gregory Wright, and digital chameleon. Nightwing scrambles to find the source of a madness that's gripping the Bloodhaven Police Department. But Bloodhaven's finest aren't just lapsing into a murderous mania, they're also exhibiting superhuman strength and speed. Babs and Dick are on a date. I can't really tell what time of day it is. I thought maybe it was breakfast, but I think it actually might be in the evening. But Dick is just super distracted. And then Babs calls for the check, in a passive aggressive way. But honestly, I would be disrespected too. And then she leaves and says something about like, just give him all the coffee and the check too. Later, Dick calls Bruce to ask for information on who backs this muscle energy drink that seems to be doing some strange things to the police. And Bruce asks, you don't see him, he's like in off panel, so you don't see him. He asks if there are problems with Babs, and Dick's like, why would you ask that? And Bruce says, because you're calling me and not her. And so that was probably one of the best scenes I think that I've seen in a long time with Bruce, even though Bruce isn't even there. But just a funny scene in this particular book that even Bruce, who sometimes seems to not really sense that there are troubles or someone might be upset or he might be doing wrong, that he's sensing like, hey, there's something up if you're calling me and not Barbara. So there you go. And we'll see. Yeah, I've got some questions. Just, is there something deeper going on? Is it just because Dick is pulled in all these directions with his different lives? Or is he avoiding, or is he just being a man and not knowing that Babs has these concerns? I don't know. So we'll see what Devin Grayson has to say. So let's move on to the main event, where I'm going to be doing Birds of Prey 50, 51, and 52. And if you recall, I don't have digital files of these. I just have paper copies. So I'll show some images, but it won't be as good. So we'll start with Birds of Prey number 50. Of course, we have a Phil Noto cover. Busman's Holiday is the title, February 2003, cover date. Writer Gilbert Hernandez, and I've actually never heard of this particular person. He did some work on Grip, The Strange World of Men, Volume 1. Haven't heard of that. Twilight Children, again, haven't heard of that. Among some other things, I did see Wonder Woman pop up there. Artist Casey Jones, who's apparently taking a break from beating up Foot Clan members, and colorist Hi-Fi Design. This comes from the DC Wikia. An explosion rocks Morgan Wendell Bioscience research facilities. A brutish monster is combing the streets, chasing after blonde women. Black Canary appears and starts fighting him. While Black Canary is leading the monster on a chase, Oracle is knocked unconscious by a masked man who breaks into the clock tower. Black Canary uses her canary cry, and after the monster recovers, he holds his hand over her mouth and nose until she passes out and carries her off. Yes, this is in fact of Mice and Men. Next up, let's get Elemental. Okay, so just to talk about the cover, of course, it's Phil Noto. What else could we say? But we do see, I guess, is this kind of a Carolyn nose? It's like a 50% Carolyn nose, if only because you can tell that Barbara is sitting, but you just can't see her full body. But if we look, we also notice that we don't see the full body. We see like 75, maybe 80% of Dinah's body. And then I wonder if, I don't know about this, the imagery behind it could be the explosion, could be kind of pointing to this combination of people within, oh, well, that's a spoiler for the next episode, I guess, but doesn't really give us anything necessarily of this monster and all of that. So beautiful, but maybe doesn't speak much about what's going on. Aspects of this issue read like a jumping on point or new number one, since they actually take time out of the issue to run through Babs and Dinah's history. Actually go through, got some narration bubbles of who Barbara was, who Dinah was. This is that side. We get to see them separately as well as combined as the Birds of Prey. So, hey, maybe it's a good hopping on point. I don't know if they solicited like that. I don't know why. I wish Carolyn were here, but since when does Dinah actually need encouragement or even info on how to fight a bad guy or when to fight a bad guy? And he is a minion at that. Let me find this section here where she says, "You're okay." Well, Bab says this, "You're okay, Donnie, you can take them all easy." And she says, "What about the shorter one? He doesn't seem to want to stay down." The shorter one, blazing energy yeah. It's just, yeah, really interesting. And then I don't even know how Babs necessarily knows who these individual people are, these minions with their masks on anyway, but she seems to have very specific details on them. But hey, new writer, so maybe we'll give some grace. This isn't as strong an intro as we usually see, especially with Chuck Dixon. I think I'm going to be unfair here multiple times, just comparing writers, new writers when they hop on to Chuck Dixon. I think that's just the way it's going to be. The lab explosion and Dinah fighting are two different settings, and it's not clear how Dinah got mixed up in the latter. And the only connective tissue between the two is Babs, who's seen that explosion and like, oh, that's another explosion, da, 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 da. But who are these masked men that Dinah's going after? I don't know. It is at least a little classic, right? Dinah's doing something normal. Later on, she's just going to go get her hair done. And then something weird or villainous happens. But it does seem a little strange that, you're at a beauty salon and then some blonde rushes in saying that she needs to be a brunette immediately. And people, I know from firsthand experience that that is not a quick process. So I just got my hair retouched up, or the roots, anyways, and that was a 4.5 hour process. It's worse the longer it is, I have to say. But just, yeah, just a little weird, but it makes sense. Dinah's always kind of doing something normal and then something bizarre happens to her. So hijinks. It's difficult to believe that Babs gets attacked in her own clock tower, and the guy knows that she is Batgirl. Trying to find that page. And yeah, gets attacked. Well, first of all, knows she's Batgirl, breaks into the clock tower. We know that there are other people who can't break in. I don't, Bruce, Dick, like these people can't break in. This, whoever this guy is able to. And then he also knocks her out. And so it's unbelievable not knowing who this guy is. And then later on, kind of knowing who this guy is, it's even more believable. So this is issue 50. This is issue 50 of a strong series that's been going on for a while, right? A fan favorite. Chuck Dixon really built something special here, but it doesn't read as a 50th. It doesn't read as special as I think it should be. In fact, something big I feel like should have happened to the team, or maybe added a new member, not whatever this is. And, the art, it's not bad, but I think it'll definitely take some getting used to. But yeah, I didn't really care for this. I'm going to give this 5 out of 10 dye jobs. So let's move on to Birds of Prey 51. Let's get Elemental. Switching up the covers, which are pretty cool. That makes me nervous. Like, oh no, is my comic damaged? But that's just the way it looks, making it real vintagey, kind of those pulp novels. Energy Person, Dinah, who even knows who that is? We'll find out maybe. March 2003 is the cover date, and same credits to same creative team, I'll say. And again, the synopsis from the Wikipedia. Java asks Black Canary for help finding Sapphire Stag. Oracle calls Black Canary and tells her that she's okay. In reality, she's being held captive by Killer Moth, the very first criminal she ever sent to jail. Java tells Black Canary how Sapphire and her son were engulfed by some sort of energy, became a single person. Boy, that sounds familiar. Hashtag Shagalicious and Firestorm and all that, and took off into the night. Java and Canary are talking to Simon Stagg scientists when the energy being arrives. Next, Sapphire and Son Inc. Killer Moth. Well, I guess let's talk about this first. I guess I kind of did, right? The pulp cover, energy being, and then I guess this is Java. I feel like this is false advertising, because that facially looks like Java, but Java doesn't wear a business suit, really. Well, I guess he does, doesn't he? Well, I don't know. Is he in here wearing a business suit? Maybe I just always think of him as like this big lug. Yeah, I guess. There he is back there as kind of a chauffeur. But he just, I don't know, maybe it's the build, because it almost looks like he's got Rex Mason's body, which maybe that was intentional. He just should be a bit bigger. Okay, so Killer Moth, woo! But it could be exciting, but I don't believe he was able to do everything that he's done so far. Break in, take out Barbara. See, doesn't that seem far-fetched? And even more so since he learned this. He says he learned it from Captain Cold and Toyman, and those just don't seem like legitimate news sources or resources in order to, I don't know, up your baddie game. And what is he wearing? Let's see here. These gloves that go up to his, I don't know, like past his bicep. He reminds me of that weird, I've never played it, Metal Gear Solid. Maybe it was the first one. And it's like this Mantis, is that his name? Just like this crazy guy that you're in this office setting and kind of dancing around. Just weird. I don't know. Why just wear a full suit or something? Anywho, He does have an interesting thought on goofy villains on page 18. So let me get there. He says, let's see here. He's talking about Batman and just the respect that he garners. And then Winter Round goes, as if the audience wants to see what's intrinsically cool turned goofy. You've seen the movies. They take a crime fighter and his opponent, and what do? They goof him up. It's because the filmmakers don't respect us. We're the epitome of cool, and they're jealous. Which I thought was interesting and almost, I don't know, meta, but I wonder, I mean, what was coming out at this time that could be true of that? Are they talking about my beloved Batman and Robin? Though this would have been past that, I think, in 2003. Yeah, for sure. So I don't know, but I guess he felt like he was goofy. He's like reverting back because he was goofy and now he's more serious. But I like the OG Killer Moth. I don't like whatever this is. It's just very bizarre. I don't like it. We have a really long flashback, which I am appreciative of the coloring style that we use and how they actually sketch out the frames of the panels. But Java is getting us up to speed on Sapphire and her son. And Sapphire is portrayed almost like a teenager. I mean, if you just looked at that image there with her blowing a bubble of gum, I feel like that could be Stephanie Brown. So it's just very bizarre what's going on there. Now, maybe it's because it is Java's perspective, and we know that Java's in love with her. But what does that mean if he's portraying her in his mindscape as a teenager and he's in love with her? Like that kind of seems a bit predatory there. I do like at least how, yeah, they could tone down the coloring, drew the borders of the panels to show that it's in the past. I'm not sure what Dinah was hoping to achieve by talking to this group of men. They don't seem like scientists. Let me get to that sequence. We are with her talking, and they're just really upset. They just look like a board. And so I'm not sure how they would actually help with the energy being that they have an issue. Dinah's motorcycle actually comes to her, which, if you've been a fan of this show and have listened from the beginning, you shall remember a Batman family issue where she and Robin and their motorcycles show up outside of his dorm room, I think, and her house. And yeah, it's kind of crazy. So that was great. So this issue seems either campy or cheesy. I mean, just with the writing and bizarre interactions, the flashback being a bit strange, the way Java and Dinah talk to each other. It's just not in line with what we're used to. And I think, Hernandez deserves a fresh or clean slate, right? Tabula rasa. But also, I think you do need to recognize what you're coming after and kind of go with that a bit, or at least transition. I don't know that I would potentially say it was a good jumping on point for new readers, even though there's an attempt there, I think, with giving short backstory of Babs and Dinah and the Birds of Prey, but it doesn't really give a good look into what Birds of Prey is. This entire arc, I'll just spoil the third one now. Dinah and Babs, they're not together until the very, very end. And that's not kind of the heart of what Birds of Prey is. Like there should be many interactions where they're together and then there's a mission, and Babs is with Dinah on the mission because she is on comms with her. But that's not what this is at all. They're just doing two separate things. I'm going to give this 5 out of 10 male gloves that are entirely too long. And finally, we have Birds of Prey number 52, Reunions. And you'd think from this cover, again, a pulp cover, that it would be Babs and Dinah being reunited, but it is not. And is this a partial Carolyn knows? Yeah, about a 50-50 Carolyn knows again. Actually, I guess those are her glasses being flung off. And it can't actually tell from this perspective whether she's sitting or not. Maybe. If you knew Babs, it's like, oh, yeah, I know what to look for. But if you didn't, I wondered if you could actually figure that out on your own. And then, of course, Dinah's got the same sort of 80%. And it does say Phil Noto. Was this also Phil Noto? It just doesn't. Interesting. It's just a different style. Yeah, I guess I can now see, even though I don't see his name, I see that style of the face of Dinah's face. That was a weird phraseology there. Okay. Oracle attacked. Canary cornered. Will they be reunited? Not so. Okay. Same creative team, April 2003. And this synopsis came from me because the Wikipedia didn't have it. The man defiantly saying he is Killer Moth is headbutted by Babs, who frees herself and traps him. Meanwhile, back at the lab, Dinah reveals that Simon Stagg is inside the energy creature as well, along with Sapphire and her son. And this stuns everyone, including me. The three people inside the energy being mess with each other enough to distract Simon, and Dinah gets a couple hits in. And now Dinah reveals that Java is actually Rex Mason. Dinah explains that the lab explosion killed Java, and some of his essence, maybe, got to Rex and confused him into being Java, and then the other three merged. Metamorpho battles the energy being, and Babs elsewhere tells the fake Killer Moth, now Twag, that she can get him help with his split personalities. Simon's scientists shoot at Dinah. Twag releases a toxin inside his containment field and forces Babs to witness his suicide, all the while mentioning they could have been a great team. Dinah sets off a beam, separating everyone and making Stagg a nice guy, ? Later, Dinah stops by the clock tower and she gets caught up on what was going on with Babs, and I guess vice versa. They watch the scientists get arrested on TV and both race off for a vacation. Meanwhile, the Mason family leaves and Stagg is messing with the equipment again. And we later see Java, either his body or a facsimile, couldn't really tell, with Stagg saying there will be a new beginning for all and Rex will come around. And next up, Love is in the Air. So I do wonder, so we're still talking about, we could be a great team, Babs, just really weird stuff. And I don't know how or why, but it takes her such a long time to get out of her own confinement or containment. And this guy, is certainly unhinged. He's been following her for years, but he's this Twag guy. So I don't know. Is this a respectful portrayal of split personalities and mental illness? I'm not really sure about that. Okay, so Dinah somehow knows that Simon Stagg is in there. I don't know how. I have many questions on this particular issue, and even the characters can't. Look, a butt shot of Dinah. So just had to point your attention to that. So even Dinah cannot explain this madness. And later on, Rex can't explain it either. They're just like, maybe this happened. And I'm thinking, basically, the writer is saying that he has come up with this, but he cannot explain why these circumstances have occurred. And on the other side, so let's say that it is just so confusing. Dinah and Rex, they're not scientists, so they're coming up with whatever they have. But someone should be able to explain in the end how all this happened, especially like Simon Stagg should be able to figure all of that out. So I don't really like how you're reading something. You as a reader are very confused and not knowing what's going on, and you're relying on people in the comic to explain it to you, and then they don't because they also don't know what's going on. So that's great empathy, and I'm able to connect with them on a very deep level, but also that doesn't help me as a reader. Stagg somehow is nice. He wants a team up. I think that this is pretty odd. I don't know if this is a character shift for something in the future. Can kind of see him smiling and kind of a family man. It just seems very odd from what I've seen of other Simon Stagg appearances. Is this a writing choice? Is this because of the accident and all he went through? I don't know. The scientists are somehow to blame, but that is not explained either. They seemed mad at Simon, but the Ray and all that, who knows? I don't know. Babs, she is not in a traumatic state at all. And let's see here. I would be watching somebody commit suicide right in front of you. And then look, they become that dust right there. I mean, she has a look of like kind of distress, but even, she just says calmly, Twag, why did you choose me to witness your suicide? I guess you just wanted to matter to someone. Is that really all you're going to say? As an aside, I would just say that I was in the basement level of the hospital just yesterday, and I was going to the cardboard compactor with boxes that I had gotten, like commodes and things. And as I was getting back to the elevator, there was a man in a suit, and then on a rolling bed tray, I don't know, was a body in a canvas body bag. And that was really affecting. That's probably like my first dead human being in a body bag that I've ever witnessed. I suppose that was at least fortunate for me that it was like a nice little canvas fabric-y looking thing. So it wasn't like a black body bag, which would have been very intense. But just the fact that I didn't actually see the body, but just I knew exactly what it was, and there it is. And this man's just kind of casually on his phone texting, and I don't know why it was in the bed. I feel like he was in the wrong area. I just want to get on the elevator. But if I was like that affected by seeing that, and she is not as affected by seeing someone die and turn into dust in front of her, I feel like that does not make sense. So this issue did have some stakes to it. There was a level of danger. It wasn't as campy as 51 in particular, but I lost my way through it. I don't know what the point of it was or of this whole story really, especially the Barbara sections. I mean, why have that guy there claiming that he's Killer Moth, wanting to team up and wants respect, but wants to be with the person who put him away in the first place. And then actually he's not Killer Moth, and now he kills himself. What was the point of all that? I don't know. The best part was the end with Dinah and Babs being together and catching up. I think that was the only time it felt like a legitimate Birds of Prey story. And what was it? Just one page? It literally was. It was one page, which is a lot, like all this stuff going on. Why does Barbara have? Oh, okay. She put a Band-Aid on these 2 lines that she got right there, as if she were bloodied. I don't know. Her head hurts from the headbutt. Interesting. Anywho, just a lot of criticism. So that was fun. And then, hey, look, we're going to do some fun vacationing. As for Black Canary, I'm still looking for that vacation, and I think you need to join me, but I'm needed here, my equipment. Ever hear of a laptop? Which is funny coming from Dinah, because remember that one issue where at the very beginning, Chuck had Dinah like really freaking out, like, what is it? What is it? And then you find out, it like pans back and it's just a computer. So anyways, that was the best part. And it was one page out of a 66-page story or something like that. So I'm going to give this 5 out of 10 gaseous suicides. And the whole arc was a 5 out of 10. Unfortunately, sorry, Mr. Hernandez. Unfortunately, I've got 3 more issues left with this guy, and then it's Gail Simone. But he's going to have to impress me in his next arc for sure. Okay, now I've got some listener emails. Some of them are YouTube comments, which I'll mention. So, first from Ian Prime, aka Ian Miller, he says, Nice. Oh, this is on episode 219. Nice. Glad that Batgirl seems to be back on track. I find that I enjoy the series a lot more upon rereads than my first reading, especially because of all the moments between the characters. Ian Prime, and then a smiley face emoticon. Next, we have a couple from Hornacek who warned me about the black screen, which I'm sorry when these happen and I'm doing screen share. I thought like, okay, this new laptop, I won't do that. But maybe I just need to have the screen share like selected and my cursor over there. It's just hard because of the notes and everything. So I wish I could tell that I can't see that screen. That's the positive thing about having, or the pro, I should say, of having a compatriot with me is that, hey, I can't see your screen, but I don't have that. So I do apologize. And thank you to Hornacek or Hornacek to letting me know, because that is always helpful. And then Hornacek comes back and says, when you were talking about the Alpha story, it sounded familiar. An amnesiac super spy who may turn out to be a killer. Very Jason Bourne-ish. And the fact that it's cover dated 2003 when the first Matt Damon Bourne movie came out in the summer of 2002 makes me think that movie could have inspired this character and story. And I thought that was great insight, and I hadn't thought of it. And that's absolutely probably correct. So thank you for that. Then Hornacek told me that the rest of my screen shares worked for part 2. So I guess I don't know. I just need to figure that out. And then also comes back and says the book came out in 1980. I think there had been another movie adaptation of it years ago, but the Matt Damon one is now the version everyone thinks of when someone mentions this book. Oh, okay. The Bourne Identity, I guess, or whichever one was the first one, came out in 1980. And so everyone thinks of Matt Damon. It was a surprise hit of that summer. So it wouldn't surprise me that this DC writer saw it and thought, these are some good ideas. Yeah. So, and I can totally get that. I think, some blockbusters and basing things off of films really works. But that story was just super bizarre. And I wanted, I guess, more backstory on Alpha and the Kane connection and how people knew that there was a Kane connection and why not go to Kane. So we'll see if he pops up again, since we know that he is not dead. And then my Earth 2 BFF, Shayna, wrote in and said, Hi, Stella. I liked Batgirl's #4 a little more than the last issues. I enjoyed all the cast Steph moments, and I hope this is a portent of what is to come. I still think there were too many narration boxes, and I think what I realized I'd prefer is if these were inner monologue boxes instead. I totally agree, and just wait, until issue 5. If this is, in fact, an arc focused on Stephanie, I think having some of Steph's inner thoughts might really help ground the story in her perspective. The quote Donovan pointed out about Steph's musings about a normal life really struck me as something I'd like more of, maybe as inner dialogue, and not just inner dialogue for Steph, but in future issues for Cass and Babs too. The problem I'm having at this point is that I feel as if the narrator has now become their own separate character, one that risks outshining our 3 heroines. At the very least, the narrator is taking panel time away from them, though I suppose if this is a book meant for a younger audience, then extra narration might be necessary. However, I'd still argue narration coming from at least one of our leading ladies is better than an unrelated third-person narrator. Yeah, and if it's a younger audience, do you think it's really getting to them, cognitively? And they realize, a lot of it is tongue in cheek, and, oh, these are people like helping us out, and they're, clearly they're writers adding their own commentary. Or are they just like, what's going on? I don't understand why they're saying this. I don't know. I guess maybe give other readers more credit. Me. Regardless, I'm very curious to see how this arc wraps up and what it might set up in future issues. I like Spellbinder as a villain in general, so it will be interesting to see what is done with him going forward. To give you a few examples of what I was referring to in my last email about reboots, I consider some of the Disney remakes, to fall into this category. I think Beauty and the Beast in particular is a good example of where I think the original spirit of the characters and story got lost in the attempt to address criticisms of the original. And I want to be clear, I in no way mean that remakes shouldn't ever address the problems of their past incarnations or can't be improved by doing so. But I think there has to be a balance because without an engaging story, you don't have a good vehicle to deliver your message with. A creator also risks alienating a sect of fans that has strong attachment to the past incarnation if they don't pay a certain respect to the original. Of course, this leads to a much larger, more philosophical question about art, who owns it, and what constitutes a valid criticism. None of which I plan on getting in here. Yeah, that certainly is probably, its own podcast I think we could talk about. But that is a really good example. And I just covered in my Dear Reader episode the Jane Eyre. Well, I did a side-by-side of the 1944 version, the 2011 version, and I picked up in 2011 this very particular line, but it was if only you could focus on it more. But where Rochester, after the reveal of Bertha, says something like, I couldn't just, it was better than a madhouse. Have you ever been to one? It's terrible. So at least where she was now is better. And so I thought, oh, well, they're trying to explain or make a bit better or more palatable what's going on to Bertha and what he's done. But still, yeah. So I see what you're saying. My point in my last email about Stephanie was simply that I had seen some discussion online about her being a weak link and a pretender, though my experience of how I have read her in past comics says otherwise. There are many reasons why Cloonan and Conrad might have chosen to write her as a quote weak link in the last couple issues, but I have to wonder if they were informed by some of these conversations. Ugh. I know it is early days of Batgirl, but are you interested in interviewing Cloonan and Conrad at some point? I am. I feel like it's more difficult now than it was a couple years ago to get interviews with, to go through PR and all of that and get interviews with creative teams, but I do really want to. I think it would be really interesting to hear more of their perspectives of these characters and what they want to explore with them. I'm sorry to hear things have been hard for you lately, and I hope they start to get better soon. Thank you so much. Take care, Sheena. And thank you for writing in. Yeah, I definitely do want to talk to them. Probably after this, first arc, I think would be good to get that down there and just get a sense of where they're going. And I do want to ask some of these questions, like the narration boxes, though, you have to be cautious and be like, okay, you have to approach that very cautiously so that it's not, a criticism and then you feel on the defensive. And totally, yeah, I'm with you 100%. I think in all you're saying in your email and with the staff situation. And that's the power for good and for ill of fandom, where we can influence, but then sometimes it's like a really negative influence. Batgirls is an example of a positive influence where finally it's happened. We were wanting this for so long. Negative influence is people hating on Rose from Star Wars Episode 8, and then her character just getting trash basically in Episode 9. So things like that. And man, where how do we even balance it? Who is right and who is wrong? The ethics and the morals of all that. I don't know. There was an example of something that I feel like I was a part of, and I was super like, please just don't do this. And one thing that I really don't like is the redesign of Peter Parker in the Marvel Spider-Man for the PlayStation. I despise that. And, people who love Tom Holland as Spider-Man, they're probably all excited. But, am I on the right side of that? I don't know. And I don't need to bully anybody and say, this is awful. And yeah, I think just people take it too far. I think you need to be respectful, but when are you right? When are you wrong? I don't know. But in that case, if you're saying, oh, Stephanie's the weak link, are you right or are you wrong? What are you reading that says that? If you're reading vintage stuff, I wouldn't say that she's a weak link, but she's certainly the one that needs the most growth compared to the other characters. But then is that all you had read and you hadn't read other stuff? So I also question fandom and it seems like they know what's going on, but a lot of them don't do their research, or they only have like one point in time or one resource that they're looking at. And it's just unfair to the character. So totally with you, because, I was looking at trying to catch up on Detective Comics, and I'm like, okay, well, Steph is completely different over here. What's going on? But I will say there are some positive things that go on in issue 5 by Shan Spoil, since that's the next part. So Okay. Thank you for writing in. Remember, you can always send in feedback. I get those pings on the YouTube videos, and I don't think I get any comments anymore on the website, which is fine. Or you can email me at batgirloracle@gmail.com. And finally, or not finally, but yeah, I'm going to stop this part and take a break. When I come back, I'm going to be covering some modern quickies, including probably Nightwing. I haven't read everything yet. That's going to be coming out. I'll be recording that and editing it really quick before my New York City trip. So definitely Nightwing, I know. And I'll definitely be also doing a full review of Batgirl's #5. And now, Zaius's Radio Hour featuring Sugartooth by Brandy Carlisle. See you guys soon.